Hello, my name is Kelly Eddington. I'm a professional watercolor artist with over 150,000 subscribers to my instructional YouTube channel, Kelly Eddington Watercolors. Today I'll show you how to stretch a piece of watercolor paper and use the pad's templates. This is featured on page 32 of my art instruction pad, part of the new learning series from Strathmore. Your pad contains 12 sheets of watercolor paper. You'll remove these from the pad one sheet at a time as you complete the exercises and painting projects. Watercolor paper is very strong. To remove it without damaging the pad's spiral binding, run a Kraft knife over the edge to make a clean tear. Keep your hands away from the knife blade. I've got to say I was probably a little too close here. Then I like to put a mark on the front side of the paper. It's a little rougher than the back, and I think this texture is easier to paint on, but sometimes that roughness can be hard to see. This next part is optional, but I think it's helpful. I'm placing the template on top of the watercolor paper. You can access the templates at strathmorelearning.com, and after centering it, I'm marking all four corners with dots on the watercolor paper. This will make it easier to tape down later. Next, I'm going to soak the watercolor paper for 5 minutes in some shallow water. I'm using a roasting pan with an inch or two of cool water in it. I make my lasagna in this pan, so there's no need for anything fancy. Meanwhile, this is how you can use the templates. Just print them out on ordinary printer paper, and this works well if you put them on a white surface, face down. You're going to scribble with a pencil on the back of the template, and as you can see, the white paper underneath the template is making its lines pretty easy to find. So I'll scribble where I see those lines. For the sake of this video, I'm using a soft dark pencil, but you can use a regular number 2 pencil. And again, I'm just scribbling where I can see the template's lines. It's a good idea to get a few things ready to go while your paper soaks. I've put down a piece of cardboard and some paper towels here. The cardboard isn't totally necessary, but it can protect whatever surface you're working on. Next, I've got some Kraft paper tape that I'm going to tear into 4 pieces. The short pieces are a little longer than the short side of the watercolor paper, and the long ones are a little longer. No need to measure these, just eyeball it. The adhesive on the back of this tape is shiny and is activated by water. Make sure you keep the roll of tape dry. I've got some more paper towels ready to go, and now it's time to take the paper out of the water. The paper will feel more flexible. Deal with it gently and don't over soak it, because then it can get waterlogged and limp. I'm putting it on the paper towels and layering more on top. Then I'm applying some pressure on this paper towel sandwich. My towels are a little small, so I put a big one on top of this. You're just trying to get rid of most of the water. If your paper looks wet and shiny, blot some more. Don't rub the paper because the surface will become rough. Just blot. I've flipped the paper over and I'm blotting the other side too. Again, try to touch it as little as possible. For the most part, I try to keep my fingers on the edges and corners. Now I'm going to tape the paper to my board. This is a wooden board I got at a hardware store. Use whatever you've got, but it needs to be tougher and less absorbent than cardboard. Just wet down one of those paper towels and drag it over the shiny side of the tape. I like to start with the long pieces. The water will activate the adhesive. Lay it on your paper, and I use those little red dots I made earlier to line it up. And see how I've left some space on the board around my paper? If your board's not much larger than your paper, you can fold and press the excess tape around the back. This tape is covering no more than a ½ inch of the watercolor paper. Work as quickly as you can while the paper is still wet. This process will ensure that your paper stays perfectly flat while you paint. The tape will go into mild shock with the water, so do what you can to smooth it down. I always run my fingernail along the edge of the paper, but I don't know if that makes any kind of difference. Let this dry completely. Depending on the humidity in your house, this can take a half hour or longer. When the paper stops feeling cold, it's probably dry. Here's one that's already dry, and I'm going to use that template from earlier. I'm putting it scribble side down on the dry watercolor paper, and I'll use a pencil to go over the outlines. You might want to use tape to tack the corners down if you're feeling shaky or if you have a lot of lines to draw. This is a pretty simple template, so I'm just going to hold it in place. I'm using a number 2 pencil that is pretty sharp but not razor sharp, and I'm putting moderate pressure on the point. Don't press too hard or you'll make ruts in the watercolor paper. If you're not sure how it's going, lift a corner and peek underneath. These templates will give you basic outlines of the painting, and I encourage you to add your own details before you begin painting. Reference photos are available at strathmorelearning.com, and you can also look at my step-by-step examples in the pad. The light here is bright, but the template transferred onto the paper, and here's what it looks like in better light. You're ready to paint. And that's how you use this pad. Thanks so much for your purchase, and I hope you'll enjoy painting with me. Please go to strathmorelearning.com to discover other Strathmore Learning Series products that I think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching.